my goal score is about a 175. I took an LSAT in August. I'm at a 163 right now, so still got a ways to go, but I'm actually working with one of your tutors, so I've had my first class and it's been going really well. So
Awesome.
I'm excited to see how it moves forward.
Great, great. Well, I'm excited to have you in the program. So we're looking for 12 points from
Yeah.
August, and you're taking it in November, right?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, awesome. Any particular weak areas or pain points you're struggling with right now?
Specifically, logical reasoning tends to be my harder section of the two, and the biggest thing I've noticed is assumptions questions tend to get me, as well as flaws and deductions. So those are the main things that I'm hoping to improve upon because that's like where the majority of my problem area is.
Cool. Well, there's a massive opportunity here because those are all really common types of questions in logical reasoning. They're the
Right.
three most common. In fact, I mean, we have necessary assumption, inference, and flaw, three
Right.
highest leverage areas. And so if you told me I'm great at those and I'm terrible at parallels, I'd be like, well, parallels, there aren't that common. So that's not as much room to improve. So we just got to get you some quick wins in each of these areas. Within an assumption, we have both necessary assumption and sufficient assumption, asking for very different things. Necessary assumption being far more common. So I'd focus on that specifically. With flaw questions, people will often talk a lot about the classic logical fallacies like mistaken reversal, mistaken negation, correlation, causation, ad hominem personal attacks, things of that nature. But
Right.
LSAC has moved away from the common fallacies or the classic fallacies towards more that are more unique to a particular argument where the author has just failed to consider something.
Mhm.
So I would think about that as you review flaw questions. Don't over index on the classic fallacies. Just focus more on hard flaw questions. And then the last thing I'll say regarding deductions, I'm going to relate that to inference questions like must be true, where
Mhm.
maybe there's a bit more formal logic involved in those than there used to be. LSAC has tended more towards formal logic since removing logic games about a year and a half ago or so.
Mhm.
So it's not anything new per se, meaning they've always been on the LSAT, but now their prevalence has increased a little bit. So I would focus on your ability to diagram conditional statements, make inferences or connections between them,
Mhm.
and we can give you some drill sets that target those specifically.
Yeah, and I think that was something I worked on in my last test or tutoring session, which was really helpful because I have never been good at diagramming. I tried to do it when I was studying on my own, and at one point I just gave up because I just could not seem to figure out how the diagramming was supposed to go. But it has been definitely eye-opening how important and helpful diagramming can be when studying for the LSAT and when preparing and practicing for it as well. I was wondering if I could maybe talk to you more about admissions related questions, just because that's kind of as you know, as I study for the LSAT, I'm also getting ready to apply to law school this cycle, and I have a lot of questions about that because it just seems like a very complicated process.
Yeah, shoot.
Yeah, so primarily one of the things that I would love to hear from you about is that I haven't been working for the last couple of years, and there was some personal stuff going on in my life where I was unable to work. And due to that, I'm a little bit concerned that my law school application will seem a little bit empty compared to other people's. What sort of advice do you have in terms of what law schools typically, especially if you're looking at at a higher ranked law school, what do they look for, and what sort of I guess resume builders can I add, if any, and what should I be striving towards in terms of my applications?
Yeah, great question. I think that folks tend to overvalue or overemphasize the resume side of things when it comes to law school admissions. This is my take, of course. Admissions folks may say different,
Mhm.
but I look at the process as being primarily numbers driven, meaning LSAT and GPA. So if you can get that 175 on testing, that's going to solve a lot of your resume worries.
Right.
That being said, though, if you're comfortable sharing it in your application, I would recommend sharing, if you can, something about the reason why you were not able to work for a couple of years, because it's one thing to not work for a couple of months. Plenty
Mhm.
of people don't work for a couple months because they graduate from undergrad and study for the LSAT instead of getting a job or can't get a job or whatever. But for years, I think that it would raise a reasonable concern on the part of law schools to say, will she be able to make it through 3 years of law school? Have those reasons why she couldn't work, have they been resolved so
Right.
that she'll be able to have the stamina to get through 3 years of law school, which I'll be frank is taxing. Law school's not a cakewalk. It's a lot of work, right?
Right.
So would you consider writing some sort of addendum talking about why you weren't able to work? And then could that addendum clarify that those issues have been resolved since then?
Right. Yeah, I think absolutely that's something I would be comfortable adding just because it is a part of my story and it has been a part of my journey to law school. So it's definitely something I hadn't considered, but something that I'm willing to and consider moving
Yeah, I would consider that necessary, and you don't need to make it long-winded. It could be concise, just a paragraph or two at most. But just don't leave the question open. Don't make them guess as to
forward.
why there's that gap in the resume for a few years. And then if there have you been able to do even if not working, have you been able to maybe do some volunteer work or work in the community of some sort? Have you been able to use that time in some other way?
Yeah, so I not as, as hands-on as I would have liked, but I prior to quitting my job, I was actually working at a nonprofit consulting firm. So when I quit that role, I did start doing some, pro bono nonprofit consulting for some local nonprofits. Just a couple here and there whenever, someone asked for advice, but I kept in touch with them, made sure that I was able to help provide them with some grant opportunities or at least a plan on how to look for grant opportunities that would be helpful to them. And recently I joined the board of my local library. So I've got a couple of things, but nothing I would consider, very taxing in terms of time or effort.
Okay, cool. I mean, I think that you've got a couple things there that you can include on your resume. That combined with the addendum,
Right.
addressing and saying that that you are able to work again and you are able to get involved in things again. I think that should do a lot to assuage any concerns they might have. And then you just maintain those activities going forward as well. And you include them on your resume, you keep it up to date. If you ever send a letter of continued interest down the line, a lot of students will apply, not hear back for months and months and months, just the way of things.
Mhm.
Then you can send a follow up where you give them a quick update, and that update includes that you're still active in these things. So
Oh,
rather that will then lengthen the duration. Let's say you apply, you take the LSAT in November, apply end of November, you send an update in maybe February or March. That shows them that you are sustaining that.
oh, I see. Okay. That's good. And then send letter like end of February-ish.
Yeah, basically, you want to maybe allow 3 months, let's say,
Right.
from sending in your application to just give a quick update saying, like, hey, I'm still interested. It's called a letter of continued interest. Highly recommended if, for anyone who's waitlisted. But even if not, if you're waiting a long time to hear back because law schools just delay giving responses because they hold all the cards and they can afford to make you wait, so they do. So just give them that update. And in your case in particular, I think it'll be useful for you to be able to show them that your nonprofit work or volunteer work on the board, for example, and such, like all of that has continued. So it's
Mhm.
not like I did it for just a month or two. I've done it now for 5 months.
Right.
And that way you can show them that you are able to sustain a position of responsibility over a longer period of time.
Ah, perfect. Yeah, thank you. One final question. So I'm sure you get a lot of questions about personal statements and what sort of topics people are writing about for their law school applications, what are some topics that you feel are oversaturated? Like, what would you recommend against students writing about, or prospective students writing about, in terms of their law school applications?
My take on this is that a lot of students will tend to over index on politics or current events, and
Mhm,
that isn't necessarily a bad thing to do. But when you make it too general in nature, like, and you say, I want to change the world or I want to change the system,
mhm.
I think that reveals a certain degree of naivete around like the impact that you will necessarily have. Like, no one single individual will change an entire system. And I
Right.
think that ends up being so vague as to not be useful. I would instead say, I would narrow the focus a little bit. And
Ah,
ideally, if you can narrow the focus to an area where you have some degree of experience and
mhm.
be able to tie your previous work to the work that you want to do in law, that'll make it more believable that you will actually carry through on that.
I see.
I also wouldn't want someone to use their essay as just a place to share their opinions about the world or their opinions about politics. I think I would want to instead share more about experiences that you've actually had to make
Mhm.
it more concrete and personal and specific,
Right.
and then
Oh,
tie that into the goals. I think any topic can be done well. It's all in the execution. I think one
right.
of the admission officers we had on earlier was saying how like I can't give feedback until I actually see the essay. I think that's quite fair because the devil's in the details. It's all about the execution of that topic. And so I think that any topic, even a controversial one, can potentially be done well. Certain hot button issues are a bit more of a minefield than others. Think about anything where where the country split 50-50 on it.
Right.
Some of those topics, it might be better to steer clear. I think as one the admission officer from UVA, Brigitte Sir, was saying how admission officers will do their best to avoid their personal takes on things impacting their judgment on you. And so if they have the opposite take on you on an issue, they're not going to auto ding you for that or
Right.
deny you. But you should still be somewhat measured and I think humble in your approach to this. Like, you're not using it to preach.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much, Steve. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, of course, Eugene. If you ever want to send over your essay draft for a take since you're in the program, I'm happy to take a look.
Oh, that would be great. Thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate
for
that.
sure. Of course. Yeah. Thanks for joining. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, you too.